grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright and godly lives in this present age. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright and godly lives in this present age.
I heard a wonderful story the other day about a pretty young girl living in a remote village in Philippines. She was very enamored by the big city and she wanted to go there and see what life was like, but she had no special training, no proper education, and she was at the mercy of the people in the big city because she ran away from home without her mother's knowledge, and she went to this big city. And pretty soon she was trapped by the people who run prostitution rackets, and she became a prostitute. Her mother knew that will happen, and so she quickly went to a photography studio and she took a picture of herself. She made as many copies as she could, and then she too left for the big city. She visited every possible place a girl in the flesh trade would go to, and she left her photograph there. And very soon she ran out of photographs, so she went back home. After a while, her daughter happened to come to one of those places and she noticed this familiar face. She picked up the photograph and she saw that it was her mother. She turned the photograph around and she found the following words. It said, "Whatever you've done, whatever you've become, I still love you. Come back home, Mom." Whatever you've done, whatever you've become, I still love you. Come back home, Mom. This is love. On a much larger scale, we receive grace like this from God. On a much, much larger scale. He looks at us, sinful people, and says to us, whatever you've done, whatever you've become, my love for you has not changed. Turn around and come back to me and receive my forgiveness and reconciliation. If you are listening to this video, in all probability, you have already received this forgiveness. If not, just stretch out, call unto Him. He will take you back and He will forgive you. Now, after we receive this free gift of salvation, some old realities start to surface in our lives, and that includes fits of anger, selfish ambition, envy, impurities, and wrong kind of sexual desires that come into our hearts. These could resurface again in a believer's life. And this verse that we are memorizing deals with that. What happens if the works of the flesh surface in our lives? And the works of the flesh are clearly listed in the book of Galatians, and they are set in contrast to the fruit of the Spirit. Now, the first part of what happens to us is the free gift of salvation, and that is by grace. And the second part of what happens to us by God's grace, again, is a work of grace called sanctification. Now, sanctification is what is done by the Spirit of God in our lives. So when the works of the flesh manifest in our lives, we have to say no to it and say yes to the work of God, the work of the Spirit of God in our lives, and the fruit of the Spirit starts to manifest in our life. That's again a work of grace. And may that be your experience as you learn to say no to ungodliness and yes to the work of the Spirit. But being frail human beings, this is a lifetime task. And we are shaped from one degree of glory to another. But failure is never final. For a Christian, you keep getting back to God, asking for His forgiveness, and moving on from one degree of glory to another degree of glory as you learn to allow the Spirit of God to bear His fruit in your life. God bless you.